Hey Fly Tires, welcome back. I'm Matt, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Now this next pattern is another one from Dave Hughes' American Fly Tying Manual. This one is the Grizzly Wulff. Now it's not too obscure of a fly. I mean, you can still buy it online out there, but you're watching a video on fly tying. You'd rather tie your flies than buy them. I get it, me too. So the distinguishing features of this one, it's a hair wing wolf type pattern, but it's a deer hair upright divided wing with a deer hair tail and a yellow body. But it's a pretty cool looking fly. I think you're gonna like it. Let's give it a shot. There you go, in the vise, the Grizzly Wulff. Most common size for this guy are as big as a 6 and as small as a 16. I'm tying this on a size 12 standard dry fly hook. Okay. Get that squared away in my vise, and I'm going to put down some black 70 denier UTC. Not all the way back yet. I'm going to just put a little base right here and leave the thread hanging where I'm going to tie this upright wing. And the wing is deer hair. Just regular bucktail, dark brown if you got it, light brown if that's all you have. So let's put that in the stacker. Open it up with the tips forward. That's how we're going to tie it in. Slowly right there. I think that is going to look pretty good. Now, think about it. Judge your length or your tie-in point by envisioning flipping it up right there where the thread's hanging, and how high do you want it? You want it to be just maybe a little bit higher than the hackle. So I am almost there. I think I'm going to go right there. So just a loose wrap, tighter wrap pulling up on this side, another loose wrap, and tight wrap on this side. See, that's flaring up a little bit. Now I'll put tighter wraps as I go back, but before I do that, just make sure I'm sitting on top. Okay. Now it'll flare a little bit on you. I'm going to put some tight wraps as I go back, maybe 5 or 6. And I'm going to reach in here with my scissors, pull this up at a 45-degree angle, try to grab all your fibers. Put your scissors parallel to the hook and snip it off right there. Now if you got that right, just put some loose wraps right here to kind of bind this down. If you put it too tight right here, you might get a little bit flare and you get a little bit poking out. So the goal is just to get a little taper right there. Okay, now take it back up to the front, maybe one more wrap. I'm going to lift this all the way up and build a dam up under that wing to prop it upright. And on this, probably a 90-degree is probably what you want. Try not to hit the tip of your hook point with your thread, which I did there, but I don't think I messed it up too bad. Okay, that's sticking upright. Now, you could leave it like that and do the rest of the fly, but typically on these wolf patterns, they split the wing. Now, I don't always do that just because when you do it, sometimes when you're done with the fly, you cannot even tell that you did it. So why do you do it if you can't even tell? It's what I ask myself. Okay, so that's one X wrap in between. Let's do one more. And then, okay. See, from side view, doesn't look any different. Look at the top, you can see that they're split. Now, is that a big deal? I don't know, but it only takes a few extra seconds, so why not? Now take our thread back to the bend of the hook. We're going to tie in the tail, which is this same deer, just less of it. Now I will put this in my stacker also, but open this one with tips pointing back. See, we got just a little bit right there. I didn't count them, but I'd say that's probably 12 fibers maybe. And it's kind of a significant tail, maybe a hook gap in length, maybe just a little less. But use your best judgment, whatever you think looks good. I think that's going to look fine right there. You see I've got a little bit of flare sticking up right there. So I'm pulling kind of tight. Now what I'll do is put a medium wrap right there and then go back up the front before I put a really tight wrap. So these wraps right here are kind of tight. Okay, I think that tail is going to look fine. Now what you do, reach in here, try not to grab your wing and try not to grab any of those tail fibers. Cut this at a little angle if you can. Again, it'll just help a little bit with that taper. I got some crazy fibers there. Let's try to get those out of the way. Now I'm going to just try to smooth this middle part of the body out before I put the dubbing, or the body on, which is not dubbing, but it's a yellow floss. Okay, I think that's going to work right there. And it's not the smoothest of bodies, but we can compensate with our yellow floss. I'm going to catch this in up toward the front so that when I wrap it down and back up, I will end up with basically 2 layers of the floss here. So secure this to right behind the wing. Now wrap your floss down and back. Just be careful if it starts spreading out on you. You might need to give it a clockwise spin. Okay, now that you got that back to the front, go ahead and catch your floss off. I don't know if you could tell because I probably sped that up, but I had to be careful that my floss wasn't trapping any of this wing up here. And I ended up having to push my wing up while I was doing that. So I'm going to throw a couple more wraps under here just to prop it back up again. Okay, now we've got it where we want. It's time for the hackle. Brown and grizzly. And although this is not a Smoky Mountain fly, a lot of the Great Smoky Mountain Appalachian flies also use a brown and grizzly. And when I do, I will put my brown, or pick a brown feather that's probably one size smaller than the grizzly. I think that has ended up looking just a little bit better. So I'm going to catch these in. Let's turn them with the shiny side out. So with just 2 wraps behind the wing. Try not to capture that deer hair there. And then at least 2 or 3 up in front of the wing. And I'm going to have to trim these stems off right here. Let's go ahead and try to flatten that out. Okay, that looks good. That's about where where the thread is hanging is about where I'm going to stop the hackle. So I'm going to wrap the grizzly first because it was in front of the brown. So 2 to 3 wraps behind, and then 3 to 4 in front, depending on how thickly hackled you want it. Most of these wolf flies are pretty thickly hackled, so see, I think that hackle looks pretty good with just the grizzly. You can see the difference of the deer hair wing if you just had the grizzly. But the pattern calls for both. In the last couple I tied, I did use both, and it turns out looking pretty good. So kind of wiggle this through here, your brown, and you try not to trap too many fibers. You're going to probably trap a few, but if you can zigzag it through there, and we can pluck them out before we're done. So it looks like I'm going to do about one less wrap of the Grizzly, because this thing is already pretty thickly hackled. So a couple of wraps to tie this one off. And you can see I've got quite a few feathers or fibers sticking forward there, so I'm going to try and pull these back and flatten it down so I can get a little bit cleaner of a head here. I will probably end up having to trim a few. It seems to be always be the case wrapping this brown and grizzly. So I'm going to, before I take my hands off that, I'm going to reach up in here and trim just a couple of these guys right here. Okay. And maybe just push these back. They'll stay back long enough to get a whip finish in here. I'll do the whip finish, and then, you know what, I'm going to need to cut this brown off first, or else it might get all in the way of doing the whip finish. So snip that guy out of there. I'm going to take my whip finish tool and try to get a 4 or 5 turn on here without trapping any of those other fibers. And success. I made it. Put your scissors in here and poke them. Hopefully you don't leave too much of a tag of your thread. But just a little bit of cleanup, brush this forward. You can still see that wing, and you can see the brown and the grizzly. So there you go, folks, the Grizzly Wulff. Pretty high floating, cool pattern. Does well all over the East Coast here. I'm sure it does well out west too. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.